to ensure that we stay with the curve, especially since now we can't have as many face-to-face meetings because of COVID-19. Now, what this has done is that there are some positives as well as negatives to this shift to remote learning. For example, trainers and facilitators can have like this. We are having this conference from the comfort of our homes and our offices without having to meet. And we have people from all over the world and all over Africa. Every corner of Africa has been represented in this conference. And that's one of the advantages of remote learning. We don't have to move, we don't have to bear transportation costs, we don't have to accommodate and feed our participants. However, remote learning also has given us some drawbacks. And an example of those drawbacks is the fact that people are not digitally savvy. People don't have access to technology, especially in Africa. A lot of the people, for example, at Rainbow, we do a lot of training for people like market women, farmers, artisans, etc. And they may not be as technologically savvy as you would think, you would like. And so all these things are some of the benefits as well as drawbacks of remote learning. Also now, for all of us, because we are mostly home, we have so many things competing for our time that it's harder to retain the attention of your participants. So this is the topic that we'll be speaking about, and we are so lucky to have two experts here with us who will be talking to us about the risks and the rewards of remote learning. And the first panelist that we have in this breakout session is Peter Crabbe. And Peter Crabbe is the HR Manager, L&D, Reward and HR Shared Services for Vodafone Ghana. Mr. Crabbe is a Chartered Fellow of CIPD. He holds a Master's degree in Human Resource Management from the University of Westminster in London, and he has a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from the University of Ghana, London. He has gained significant experience in human resource management and development through working in different capacities within the HR function in various organizations throughout the world, like Sainsbury's Supermarkets in the UK, Metropolitan and Allied Ghana, Scancom Limited, which is MTN Ghana, as well as Air Liquide Ghana. His previous responsibilities have included general HR, industrial relations, recruitment, HR services, learning and development, and reward and recognition. I can go on and on, but I'm sure you can all tell that we have a very qualified person in here to talk to us about the risks and rewards of remote learning. Next to him, we have Mr. Ashraf Shenouda, and he's the founder and managing director of AGS Associates in Egypt. And Ashraf is an Egyptian-Canadian professional with an international exposure in 5 continents and more than 25 countries. He holds an exclusive mix of corporate and SME governments and management, in addition to coaching and training experience with hands-on best practices for more than 30 years. Through these years, he has been providing consultancy, training and coaching for corporates, banks, and MSME clients, ranging from FMCGs, ICT, banking, telecommunications, consumer durables, industrial products, and international development institutions, like the IFC, a member of the World Bank Group. Ashraf is a certified master trainer, instructional designer, and corporate governance trainer by the IFC. Again, IFC is a member of the World Bank Group, and he's also an assessor for the Learning and Performance Institute, which we've been talking about a bit today. He has also co-authored an SME governance toolkit with the IFC Knowledge Management Team in Washington, D.C. I could go on and on and on about Ashraf, but I think I'll stop here. So thank you so much, gentlemen. Peter, Ashraf, thank you so much for spending your time with us here this morning. And we are looking forward to learning and hearing from you. And so the order in which it will go is like this. To our participants and to our audience, what is going to happen is that Peter and Ashraf are going to each give us a 10-minute presentation, after which we will move to the question and answer session. And so whenever you are ready, we'll go with Ashraf first, and then after Ashraf, we shall have Peter's presentation. So Ashraf, whenever you are ready, please, can we have your presentation?
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Baba, for your kind words and your great introduction. And I'm really happy to be here and to contribute to these beautiful and amazing efforts towards really better Africa, if I may say, and to build on the a very important and crucial role for the L&D professionals. So, as you had your introduction, our key point is to talk about risks and rewards together when related to remote learning. And here I would like to tackle this subject from a macro, a little bit point of view. And this is where, for instance, we can see the collapse in New York Stock Exchange after World War I. Then we had World War II, and since then, this is the third disruption that happened to the world, the COVID-19. And in fact, I have to say that in COVID-19, caught off guard most of the companies, if not all of the companies, well, ranging from the Fortune 500 companies, family-sized companies, and as well SMEs. And therefore, those companies stayed on survival mode, which means that they try to reduce the impact of the COVID and their performance by downsizing, by cutting salaries, and cutting training budgets, of course. And while doing this, in fact, they forgot something very important. They missed on their people. And when I say people here, from many aspects. First, the psychological safety. I mean by here, like we need to draw on humanity much, much more. So those people are either mothers, fathers, kids, sisters, and all of them are facing lots of uncertainty or facing a loss of one of their beloved. And moreover, they are worried about the future. So here comes the role of management again, where they missed many people would have missed on their people as well. Establishing a culture of continuous improvement and having this culture would create in itself a continuous learning culture, which means that dealing with learning not as a one event or dealing with L&D as simply a reactive approach for the company. Well, learning culture should be a function on its own, dealing with all the other functions and looking into the future and dealing with these uncertainty, which most of the time was not there. Again, as part of that, they lost about creating new opportunities and new ways of doing business. Hence, there is a great need now to and upskill their people. And based on Fosway Group research, which is a leader in HR analysis in Europe, 87% expect that skill gaps to become more significant in the future. Moreover, hiring new people will not bridge the skill gap alone, which means that we need to upskill and reskill our people to be able to navigate with the new normal. As per the World Economic Forum, it showed that, well, this was back in 2018. So at that time, it showed that not less than 54% of the employees will require a significant and upskilling by 2022. And as I mentioned, this was back in 2018, which means that this number should have grown significantly. So as per the report, 35 of these employees would need learning and development for up to 6 months, while 1 in 5, let's say 20%, would need more than 6 months of development and upskilling. And here lie the opportunities. As per Albert Einstein and many other economists, in the midst of every crisis lies great opportunities. Indeed, the future is already here. As you can see now, Africa's IGDP, which is the GDP related to internet, could reach up to $712 billion by 2050. As per 2020, it's estimated at 115, which is 5% of the total Africa GDP. And this is basically a result of increased access to faster internet. I'll talk to that later. Rapidly expanding urban population and a growing tech talent pool. Moreover, there is an active startup ecosystem with currently 700,000 developers with more than 2 billion equity funding in 2019. And this, of course, will have its great impact in creating solutions to increase education, to increase access to education, healthcare, finance, and of course, creating jobs. And these will create jobs not only within each country, but throughout all Africa and even beyond the frontiers of Africa. And this is thanks to technology as well. Moreover, and one important thing, it's helping COVID-19, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. And here comes the need for new cognitive and social emotional skills. I believe we heard about that in the morning. I'll go briefly in it. And these will include resilience, cause-goal analysis, people management, emotional intelligence. You can see the social aspect of the skills is really getting really crucial to the organizations. Decision-making, critical data analysis, adaptability, innovation, creativity, and critical thinking, among other activities, among other skills. So this creates really great opportunities for L&Ds and for the organizations at the same time. And as this was before the pandemic, and now with the pandemic, it's made these skills really non-negotiable skills for any organization. And it worth noting here that those skills are the kind of skills that robots will not be able to do, given that, as per the World Economic Forum, that 85 million jobs will be replaced by robots in 5 years. And this will create a 135 million job, or let's say new jobs. So where are the risks and challenges here in learning, or let's say remote learning? First, losing the human aspect. And this is very important, generally speaking, and specifically in Africa, where we need to draw all the time on humanity. And one of the risks as well is not coping with the current and future challenges and opportunities. And it's worth noting that in a bad system or in an organization that is not really aware about its ecosystem about what's happening in the world, here comes the challenge that having a good employee wouldn't really be able to perform and not capitalizing on the diversity, not creating a learning and sustainable culture, follow up on learning transfer. I'll come back to that right away, and losing the relevant mix of a learning experience. And finally, the lack of quality of internet and electricity. And here it's very important to focus on the next generation requirements for a competitive and, let's say, a productive learning experience where personalized guided learning becomes really essential with real-world practice. And most of the researchers had showed that 98% of the learning happened really on the job. And here comes the other challenge of the mobile communications, which is, again, lots this picture is in Kampala, for a teacher in Kampala dealing with their students and sending them some reports using the WhatsApp. And here it's worth noting that 78% of Africa is covered now by 3G. And in 2025, 170 million more people in sub-Saharan will have reached to 3G and 4G, which means, again, the mobiles, the smartphones is a very important tool that we can rely on and design the material to deal with. And as well, to follow up on the training, which I talked about in the new learning experiences, and the follow-up on training through nudges, through the SMSs, through coaching, and the mobile communications comes with a great role. And finally here, the good news that Starlink, company called Starlink, be through low orbit satellites and at a good rates. And here comes the role of the local community organizations to prepare the different neighborhoods to have access. And finally, let's confirm that the future is already here. So let's get ready. Thank you, and over to you, Baba.
Thank you so much, Ashraf. And I have learned so much from your session. One of the things that I have learned is that the GDP of Africa is projected to be 712 billion by 2050. That was mind-blowing for me. It is important for us as L&D professionals to position ourselves properly so that we can make a good contribution to this, as well as bear some of the monetary rewards of doing good work and tapping into this GDP. I always believe in the bottom line. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now to our lovely participants and delegates, I'd like you to share with us in the chat box in two words, 2 to 3 words, some of your takeaways from Ashraf's presentation. So please share with me in the chat box while we invite Peter Crabbe to take the main stage and also share with us, and also as he prepares his presentation and he prepares to start. So please share with me in 1 or 2 words some of your takeaways from Ashraf's very, very, very insightful presentation, while Peter gets ready and you start your presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Baba, can you see my screen?
Yes, Peter, we can see your screen. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, while you are preparing, I have a comment from Nana Kosia Dakwa who says the culture of continuous improvement. That is very true. Thank you for sharing. That is something that was a big standout moment in Ashraf's presentation. Peter, over to you now.
Okay. So remote learning, risk and rewards. When I saw the topic, I asked myself, why not digital learning? Well, remote learning. Let's start from there. So basically, remote learning is also referred to as a distance learning. And it's a situation where you create opportunity for 2 people to engage without being present in the classroom. And this started way back in 1728, where the first recorded instance of distance learning occurs in Boston, USA. Caleb Phillips advertised a private correspondence course, in the newspapers, and it was gazetted. So that was the first time. Then in 1858, University of London began to offer distance learning. So all those times, the technology available was piece of paper and printing. So that was used to promote distance learning, where documents are sent to people to read, they answer questions, and they send it back. 1969, Open University in UK began offering distance learning. Then came the World Wide Web, and then we took advantage of it. And that is what we are talking about today, the opportunities. So if you look at digital learning, and then you look at remote learning, digital learning that's facilitated, enabled, or mediated using electronic technology for explicit purpose of training, learning, or development in organizations. So with the advent of technology, we are doing that in various forms. Previously, it's a paper document that I sent to people to read and answer questions, but now it's taking various forms with the advent of technology. So this is by no means the entire list, but these are some of the ways that virtual, digital, or distant learning is taking place. So we have movies or docuseries, documentaries, e-books that comes in both audio and print, should I say print, soft. We have online courses, use of social media, webinars, podcasts, e-workshops, etc., just like the one that we are having today. So what are the advantages? It's convenient just in time. Any one of us can go onto the web and search for anything to learn anywhere. You can be in the bus, you can be at work, you can be home, anytime, anywhere. You can source for anything that you want. Efficient. You don't have to use 2 hours to go through traffic to get to a training venue and same back, breathing in fumes from traffic, which makes it a bit healthier as well. It's also targeted and relevant. For instance, this webinar, you can choose the one that you want to go to and a time to get in based on your availability. Access to global resources. We are having this webinar. We have resource persons from all over the globe talking to us. Personalization. You can learn what you want to learn. And then collaborative or social learning. That is happening online. People come together, they share ideas, they send messages or information to everybody to benefit from. So this is the benefit to the employee. To the employer, access to local and international experts. At work, we organize a webinar, and just like this conference, we brought resource persons from all over the globe to talk to employees. Previously, you would think of flight, accommodation, and their availability. So they could be working, just set aside 2 hours or 1 hour and talk to people and then go back to work. The inconvenience of traveling and all that are eliminated. Cost efficient, minimum to no cost. People are attending this webinar for free, and there are so many events happening. There are also platforms that offer free and no cost training. So I've talked about global reach, delegates as well. Wherever your employees are, you can reach them without necessarily bringing them down to one particular place. And consistency, you can record it and everybody will listen to the same thing. So you don't have a situation where people listen to different programs. Meanwhile, you want to create or kind of imbibe one message, but different people sending it out in their own way and explanation. The risk, distractions, depending on where you are, you may not be able to pay attention, more so to during this COVID time where children are also schooling from home and they don't really care what you are doing or who you are talking to. When they want something, they want it, and they will barge in anytime. You may also not have your own place where you can set a particular room aside. You are staying with family, the challenges that come with it. Connectivity, internet, and electricity. In Africa, electricity reliability is not guaranteed. It can go off anytime. And once it goes off, your internet goes off if you are using routers, fiber, which runs on electricity. So you always have to get a backup. Sometimes electricity also goes off, and then you have the challenge. Sourcing virtual courses. Sometimes we know what we want to learn, but we don't know where to get it. That can also be a challenge. We also have access to digital tools. We are talking about 5G, 4G, 3G penetration. We are not there yet in a lot of places. Even 3G is not accessible in some places. Use of collaborative tools. I remember when we started online learning, you attend webinars and people were struggling with the use of Zoom or other collaborative tools. They don't even know how to mute and all that. So those challenges were there. And then the desire and commitment to learn on the part of employees themselves. For the employer, tracking participation and attention is a challenge. People will log in and not pay attention. Online facilitation skills is something new we all have to learn to do. And it can be sometimes frustrating when you are used to talking to people and reading their facial expressions, and then you are talking to a laptop and you can't see anything, you can't hear anything. Lack of digital learning design capability. So not just the facilitation, but the design, content design capability. Privacy, there are some information that you don't want everybody to hear. Once you are sharing that online, you cannot guarantee where your employee is sitting, who is sitting with him or her, and who is accessing that information. Collaborative tools and apps. If you can buy one, then you have to use the the open source ones. And once again, privacy challenges come in. Appropriate content. If you don't have the resources and you are going online to shop and scout for free to virtually low-cost content, will it be appropriate for you? And then leadership commitment. People are supposed to be in programs learning, but their line managers are still demanding tasks from them. Now, let's narrow down to running your own webinar. Some of the things that you have to take into consideration is attention of your delegates. So how can you make your presentation fun in such a way that people will be involved? Then training design, not too lengthy, not too much talking, blending it with other models and then choosing the appropriate tool. So just to share some of the things that we did at Vodafone. So the moment the coronavirus started, fortunately, we had some of the tools that we made available. So Vodafone University, where people can go, LinkedIn Learning, we also have it. We have Skype for Workplace, which we use. And then we have Workplace, which is also the Facebook version of enterprise version of Facebook, if I may put it that way, and then Learning Directory. So we started using these resources to reach out to our employees, direct them to the universities to learn how to work through on certain times, organize a training for employees on Workplace, on Skype, and then we threw our Learning Directory at employees to direct them as to where to go for what course and content. We also supported our employees with laptops. Those who were using desktop, we gave them laptops. And those that we couldn't give laptops, we sent their desktop to their various homes and set it up for them. We gave them modem, we gave them extra data so they'll be able to access the internet and continue their learning. We also introduced WebEx. We were using Skype, but we introduced WebEx because with WebEx, we could track participant attention. It had breakout rooms like we are doing here, which was more convenient than the Skype in the Workplace. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to share with you.
Thank you so much, Peter. This indeed was an insightful presentation, and I'm sure that our participants have picked up a lot. I picked up a lot, and I picked up the things to take into consideration when you are developing content for online. And we said attention of your participants. We talked about training design. We talked about blending the learning, and we talked about appropriate technology. So thank you so much for sharing your wealth of experience with us, and also for sharing with us what you're doing in Vodafone. Thank you so much. At this point, I would like to invite the participants. Please, what are the questions that you may have for both Peter and Ashraf? What are the questions that you may have? Please share with us in the chat what questions you may have. What would you like to know from Peter and Ashraf? And while our participants are sharing their questions with us, I'd like to ask you, both of you, Peter and Ashraf. So I think I'll take Ashraf's answer first, and I'll take Peter's answer next. How can we harness the full benefits of remote learning? As L&D professionals, how can we harness the full benefits of remote learning? So we'll take your comments first, Ashraf, while we wait for the discussion from the other for the question from the other participants. But how can we harness the full benefits of remote learning? Ashraf?
Well, this is a very important question, in fact, Baba, and this, I believe, should start from focusing on the employers themselves and ensure that they believe in having a real learning culture that does not happen for a one-time event, and that there are lots of needs for reskilling and upskilling their employees. And building on this part, the employers should ensure, together, of course, with the L&D professional, should ensure that the participants, the potential participants, are really motivated not only to learn, but also to apply the learning. And this is very important, especially with remote learning, where the application comes a little bit tough because of the challenge in ensuring the learning transfer to their workplaces remotely. And here comes again the role of technology and nudges, which is based on the behavioral science, to remind the participant of what to do, when to do, within which circumstances, of course, together with the peer support. And this, I believe, one of the key challenges for remote learning, that is the transfer of the learning on the job place. Over to you, Baba.
Thank you so much, Ashraf, for your insights. And now I move to Peter. Peter, the question was, how can we harness the full benefits of remote learning? Hello?
Hello.
Yes, the question
Can
was,
you hear me now?
yes, we can hear you. The question was, how can we harness the full benefits of remote learning?
Okay. So I think the first thing we have to do is to empower employees to own their own development. Let people know that, look, the future is uncertain. You know, what we know today may not be relevant tomorrow. We need to continuously learn, because the new thing is learning how to learn. Whatever you know yesterday will no longer be relevant tomorrow. New skills are coming up, and we have to continuously learn. So empower employees to do that. Then provide employees with options. So how and where can they go to learn? There are a lot of resources available, both free and the one that you can buy. If you have the resources, you can buy your own platform and dump content that is relevant to your area and to your future in there for people to learn and be abreast. Now, the platform should also be very flexible and convenient for people to use. Some people want to listen to audio, some people want to do interactive, some people want to read. You have to, make all those options available. If you don't have the resources, you can scout and source options and share with your employees. So, for instance, you hear about this webinar, which is free, you don't have to pay for it. You just send it to all your employees and encourage them to participate in that. We also have to train employees to use collaborative tools, these platforms, online learning platforms. The fear to use it alone will discourage people from learning. And then as organization, we also have to develop internal competencies in designing and delivery virtual programs. I think these are some of the things that we can do to harness their full potential.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. I think I have learned a lot from you from this answer. And we actually have another question from this time from the audience. And John would like to know from you, how do you keep remote learners actively engaged during virtual learning sessions? And I think I'll take both of your views, both Ashraf and Peter. So as usual, I'll start with Ashraf and give Peter a chance to catch his breath. But the question is this: how do you keep remote learners actively engaged during a virtual learning session? And I'd like to remind our participants that this is the question and answer session. And so kindly, please, I invite you to share your questions with us in the chat box. So over to you, Ashraf.
Yeah. Well, Baba, this is a very important question. And in fact, this was a key challenge at the very early stages of depending on the online learning. And here we need to differentiate between the webinars and the training. So during a training where the participants should not exceed like 20 to 25 participants, and the main reason for that is to ensure a high level of interaction. And this is where, as I mentioned during my presentation, that we need all the time to ensure that we're not losing the human aspect, and especially that we are based on technology all the time. And sometimes we face the challenge as well with limited broadband capacity, that the participants would not have the option to have their webcam ready. So that means that the instructor would not be able easily to keep in touch with his participants. So it's very important at the very beginning to have the strategy of the experiential learning, even with the online learning, because unfortunately many entities would sacrifice the experiential learning during the online learning. This is where lots of activities, lots of breakout rooms activities, which simulates, I mean by breakout room here, the simulation of group learning, because as you know, adults are here to learn from each other and not only from the instructor. So providing them with these opportunities, breaking the ice at the outset of the training by having each individual presenting herself or himself, and hopefully if the situation will allow it, that they would have their webcam on at least during the introduction, every person talking or presenting or introducing herself or himself, having their webcam ready. So this will create a certain kind of stimulation to the face-to-face learning, where participants will get to know each other better, either through breaking the ice, either through breakout activities, and of course, during the different discussions and conversation, and above all, maintaining the motivation level of all the participants.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ashraf. Thank you so much for that wonderful answer. And Peter, I was coming to you with the same question, but now you have a question that has been directed to you specifically. And the question is from Nana Kosia, who says, can Peter tell us how they were able to handle the issue of confidentiality when staff had to work from home? So Peter, if you could share with us how you address that issue of confidentiality. Nana Kosia would be very grateful.
Okay, so first of all, every employee has been taken through the data protection, GDPR, program, so you know what is expected of you. Everyone has signed a confidentiality agreement on that, and it's something that we keep reminding employees about. We also encourage people to not to open their laptops or engage in communication in public places. So if you know that you are going to do something to do with Vodafone and information, look for a place where you can guarantee the privacy and security of our data and our information. So this is something that we keep driving home every time.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you so much. And I think that it's time for us to wrap up. I think that it's been a great and insightful session. And so I know we have a few more questions. One is about how do we evaluate remote learning, and do the challenges of remote learning outweigh do the benefits of remote learning outweigh the challenges? So I'd like us to take those two questions. Please, if you can give us a 30-second answer to that. I will ask you one and I'll give Ashraf the other. And so I'll ask you, do you think the challenges of remote learning outweigh the benefits? And then Ashraf, I'll ask you to answer, how do you evaluate remote learning? So Peter, since you already have the stage and we are wrapping up, do the challenges of remote learning outweigh the benefits?
No, the benefits outweigh the challenges. That's a simple answer that I can give.
Thank you so much, Peter. I'm sure that our participants may want to reach out later to have a conversation, but let me assure our participants that this is the first of many such events that we have planned. So you will have the opportunity to engage with even more panelists, more speakers, and with one another in the coming year. This is not just a one-off thing. We are planning to have some roundtable discussions. We won't leave you out cold after this conference. And so, Ashraf, please answer our last question for this very insightful session. How do you evaluate remote learning?
Well, first, towards the end of the workshop, the online workshop, we can send immediately, and this can be sent actually with the handouts, or have a poll, whatever are the available means, to have an immediate reaction towards the end of the workshop. This is one thing. The other thing that I really rather doing in simultaneously, I mean, that to have a recap session in a certain time, in a certain range of time, let's say after 2 weeks or 3 weeks, where we have like an hour time with the participants, having their feedback on the learning, how they started applying it, and what and where are the challenges, and here where we can have a real feel of the impact of our training. And lastly, the impact on the business, and this would require some kind of cooperation, of course, from the client and the employer after a certain point of time.
Thank you so much, Ashraf. Thank you so much, Peter, for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. And thank you so much to our participants for making this a very interactive and insightful session. At this point, it is time for us to move over to the closing ceremony. So if you look on your left hand, you will see the stage. So let's go back to stage and let us join the wrapping up and closing ceremony. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Shall we all proceed to join the closing ceremony? So if we can all go on, click on stage. On our left-hand side, the stage icon, and on your right, it will pop up. The pop-up will show, and then you can join the closing ceremony from there. Thank you all very much. This session has now come to a close. So let's all join the wrapping up session. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Let's all join the wrapping up session now. This session has ended now.